You're getting at the question of mass, right? That with the debate between the monks and the Lutherans didn't matter so much to the mass because they were looking at the stained glass. So the question is, what is the stained glass? Mm-hmm. How do we get back to that mass? Because I don't think that we're losing the mass. I just think it's reconfiguring. Because there are lots of instances in which 100 million people watch the same 3-minute video. The question is the
But they collect and disperse, where I think in the past...
But there's got to be a way to make money off those moments.
I think there's opportunity to make them on the moments, but they're so spontaneous. And the interesting thing about brands that fund all of us is they can't move at that speed.
I think they can. I think that if you look at, people are still going to read books. People are still going to read newspapers. People are still going to go to live performances. Just maybe not as many. And so those are all sort of ways of packaging stuff that was instant. So a live event, you want someone to analyze that or to package it or to give you a memento, which is what a book effectively is. Those are still going to occur, I think. They'll just have to happen a little faster, because you'll have to once you got to ride the Susan Boyle wave, because someone else is going to come along. Now there's a 12-year-old kid who sings like Michael Jackson. He's got 1 million views or whatever.
So all this stuff is so fleeting, and to me they're just those great little moments that we're now able to share, rather than, oh, did you see that woman? No, I missed it. Oh, you should have seen it.
But I think Tom's point is a good one. How do you monetize something that only exists for like 3 hours?
I think we're going to go back to the age of the first era of TV, where it's all ad supported into the content, right? So the Flintstones are brought to you by Winston. Right, cigarettes, and there's Fred Flintstone smoking a cigarette. We may not get that.
But how long before somebody's just gonna? Did you ever see that ad?
Yeah.
Marty Rowell with Fred Flintstone having a cigarette, hiding in the back.
Actually, the Google, the lady.
But perhaps TV content goes that way, right? Coca-Cola decides we want to produce American Idol.
They're already doing that.
Consumers going to watch that. They want to watch content uninterrupted.
American Idol, they've got a whole show sponsored by somebody, and then they do a little commercial where all the contestants talk about the product.
And everybody with a PVR just watches because they're just dying to see the product.
They do watch it.
But even the PVR, I find when I'm fast forwarding through those commercials, I'm still getting the message.
Well, retention is high.
Yeah, but you got
No. Retention is pretty high.
I just swim in a lot of this
shit. You're borderline genius or should be locked away. Of course.
I just play one on TV.
Okay, here's another question for you guys.
It's like Clockwork Orange for you.
I think one of the big shifts that we've seen is that for the first time ever, I don't have to consume a fire hose of content. I can actually create and contribute to that fire hose. And everybody's after their 15 megs of fame. 10,000 hours on YouTube, right? Your odds of being discovered. Yes, you can go and find Susan in the church, and that's that made the show. Last year it was the opera singer. Mm-hmm. Right? They finally figured out people don't really care who has talent. They want people that can't sing because they're a train wreck, or they want somebody who's going to surprise people. It looks like a train wreck and sings like Sarah Brightman, right? So not being disrespectful, I'm just saying.
But the thing about minor league baseball,
was that harsh? Can we cut? Is there a beautiful high-speed train that hits at one. Anyways, go ahead.
The thing about minor league baseball that I think is also true of the internet is none of these guys are ever going to make it. But they love the game.
Yeah, of course they do.
And they're there because they want to play.
And they'll play for nothing.
So if people get 10 views, that's 10 views.
Yes.
Right? And everyone wants attention, and everyone's playing the game, even if the odds are stacked against them, because just playing is fun.
Yeah. So now let's move a little bit into the branding world, because we all make our living on the fact that somewhere out of these brands charge enough of a profit they can fund some money to kind of get attention and continue to give me an example of a brand that's launched itself in this new world and succeeded. Because every time I read, the most valuable brands are the ones that primarily built themselves through the golden age of television, or came along with such a new application like a Google that you couldn't help but get involved. But give me an example of one.
University of Phoenix. You know University of Phoenix?
No.
Yeah, that's a good
I know if there is one.
University of Phoenix.
Yeah, that's a good
they spend hundreds of millions of dollars, and they only market online. They only brand online. They have completely. It's an online university. It's a web university, and they are one of the top advertisers in most. If you talk to most media companies, one of the top advertisers.
And do they do any traditional advertising marketing?
Not that I know.
Reminds me of when I grew up, they used to mark on the back of match packages. You an aircraft scanner.
That's right.
Remember that? I always wanted to know how to do that.
But you think about it, it just fits their business model perfectly.
Okay, so
but that's not.
give me a consumer brand that's found a way, because obviously if they're not winning.
Fair enough. But just it's hundreds of millions of dollars. These guys.
Okay, so they spend hundreds of millions of dollars online.
So is it going to be this?
Give me a consumer brand that's launched online and social media that you go now is building, because that's obviously, if they don't start figuring out how to do this, right? There's a lot of our industry in trouble. There's ad agencies in trouble. There's mainstream media.
Sure.
There's a lot of money that's
You're talking about one exclusively online that has only
primarily
it online.
Primarily, I'm not saying they're not using television stuff, but primarily it's built to follow.
Why should we have an example of one that's purely online?
Okay, then give me a great example of one that's balanced in both. I'm just looking at the projection, the television audience is going down 2% a year.
Well, I don't think that a lot of advertisers and a lot of brand advertisers have figured out what their optimal media mix is. So there aren't a lot of fantastic. There's some decent examples.
Pepsi's doing some pretty interesting stuff. Yeah. I mean, they're using a lot of social media, but that's not all they're using. But for certain brands, that's a big part of what they're doing.
It's definitely an and, not an or. In this case, social media being added to the marketing mix is something that we're seeing more and more of. But I agree with all these guys that it's going to complement everything else you're doing right now. Somebody will emerge. Maybe one of your clients, the Nissan.
You say that a little louder. Yeah. Shameless plug, but
I don't know if they're sponsoring this podcast, so I don't want to hear it. But
Nissan.
Vote for me. Just kidding.
We're not going to go at each other. I'm the moderator. We're going to pick on these guys.
But so companies are getting it. I think what the biggest problem with social media and marketing today is that social media intersects so many battle lines that have been drawn within the marketing discipline field. So, you have PR guys doing PR. We talk to the media primarily and do other stuff, but primarily, PR is media relations. You got advertisers creating ads for TV and so on down the line, and nobody really talks to each other that much or really integrates. It's never really happened that often. Once in a while it's great, it works, and most times it doesn't. And social media has been sort of bounced around from place to place, and I think where the real power of it is that it does intersect across all those boundaries. And I think companies and marketers and agencies all have to get together and play in the social media space together where the real power will be. So what you guys are doing, and I've always had a ton of respect for Tony, because you don't sort of follow the traditional battle lines and say we do X. You kind of step back and do what's right for that job. Not every big agency takes that same kind of agnostic approach, and that's been a bit of perhaps a failure of how social media has been able to pick up some steam in the marketing space. But smart agencies and smart clients are looking to go beyond their traditional agencies and start to demand that social media gets done.
So we're going to give this to you guys then, because it's a great point. So I don't think there's a conversation that's not happening in every marketing group saying social media, shining lights, this is the next thing, and boy, you can create a video for 3,000. But how many brands and ideas are really worth social media? To me, social media is an idea that I'm worth sharing with someone else, socializing. So do you think any brand can live in that space, or do you think eventually people are going to start building PVR firewalls and say, I just don't want to hear about yet another social media project invading what I thought was my domain, which is Twitter or Facebook?
Well, I think it depends on how you think about social media. I mean, if you're thinking about a big brand, even like Pepsi saying, let's come up with this campaign and then we'll push it out through these channels and then we'll bombard people with these messages. Well, that's not social media. I don't care if you're using Twitter or YouTube. Mm-hmm. That is not what makes social media social media. If you look at a brand like, say, Zappos, which I had never even heard of until I saw people mentioning it on Twitter, they're talking about Zappos service. They're talking about Zappos product. They're talking about Zappos reaching out to them.
It's a great example. It was on The Apprentice too, and that's something that started spiking everybody talking about.
Well, and they're talking about not about, hey, Zappos is reaching me with this really fantastic viral marketing. They're talking about someone at Zappos who reached out to them and help them with something.
Yeah.
That's social media.
So they're an enabler. That brand enabled something.
But that is marketing.
But I think
it doesn't